We're here with Dr. Yates's students from Bedford County, and we're also here with Trevor Finney and Jonathan Bradley from the University Libraries today.
Today, we're here to talk about 3D art. So we're here to talk about 3D art, and we've been working on building a 3D virtual reality sculpture garden full of 3D artwork, and to host 3D artwork that's made by kids like you, by anyone interested in 3D. As you can see here on the screen, we've got a few examples of 3D that you may have come across so far. We've got some games that you may have seen, but even things like shoes, bikes, cars, buildings, toys, movies. Really a huge part of the world and life is kind of created now through digital 3D artwork. You've probably already made 3D art in your life, whether it was like whether it was Legos, or if ever you've played with like Play-Doh, or you've done a construction project out of cardboard. You've already made something in 3D. You just made it in kind of the physical world instead of the digital world. In the digital world, 3D is all based on geometry, and we've got a few different kind of like key terms. But basically, you have these points created in 3D space called a vertex. Between those is drawn a line called an edge, and between all of that is created a face, and that's how you get something like this box. And that's kind of the basics of how 3D is generated for you to see it. It works the same way in Spider-Man as it does in Minecraft. You can stretch things, you can move them up and down or left and right, and you can spin them, right? So it's just like taking any normal object and just kind of manipulating it and moving it around. And then kind of taking those components, you can also take simple shapes and put them together to make more complex ones. So here we have an example of like a dancing robot that is made up of a bunch of these simple shapes. We've got spheres, we've got kind of a sphere cut in half for his jaw, we've got cones for his hands, and rings for his arms. So those are kind of the basics of how to create 3D artwork. I created this as to kind of like show some of the different types of 3D that you can make. And Minecraft is this type right here. It's called kind of a hard surface because you're making an object that has hard edges out of the geometry. The really fancy word would be polygonal modeling, but sculpting is a lot like Play-Doh. You start with sort of like a ball of clay, and then you just kind of push it around until you get what you're looking for. And the last type of 3D art represented here is virtual reality painting. And that's this big brush stroke that swirls around the sculpture. And that's really the new kind of 3D artwork for in the field. Actually, an artist right now who's using VR painting to create concept art for movies, like Marvel movies. So he'll put on his VR goggles, he'll paint a scene like for Miles Morales, he'll paint a scene of a city with Spider-Man swinging through it, and then he'll just kind of move his face through it like a camera, and they'll kind of like plan out their shots that way. There's a lot of tools that are out there for you to start messing around with it, to start playing around with 3D art. So I'm going to show you one of them I really like. This one is a sculpting tool. And so here we have our ball of clay. And this is a totally free online tool. You don't have to download anything. You can run it in your web browser. And what's really neat about this is we have our ball of clay. And just by clicking on it, I can start to build up some clay. and start to change those shapes around. And you can see I can push into it and carve a little bit and start moving it around. And of course, the best thing about digital art is you have the undo button. But I thought we could, I went ahead and created a pumpkin to show you that we can, just gonna delete that sphere and go back to my pumpkin. And so I made this a little before we met, and just to show you kind of like how quick and easy and fun it can be sometimes, thought it'd be fun to just like carve this little pumpkin while we hang out. Because I think that's something, I love pumpkin carving. I don't know if anybody else, how everybody else feels about it, but it's one of my favorite things. So we'll give him a nice and a spooky mouth. And so you can see how fast this can really be and how kind of powerful it can be to start really just kind of playing around. We've got lots of options here. And one of my favorite things to do whenever working in 3D artwork is just to press buttons. I think that's kind of the way that's the best way to learn, is just to sort of press buttons. It's hard to break it, you know? Unlike if you're working with wood, you know, it's gotta be really careful and really safe, and you need to practice good wood handling techniques. If you're working with Legos even, better be careful that you don't drop those on the floor, because you definitely don't want to step on one. But here, you know, you have a lot of leeway to really just kind of like play around and start making stuff.
One thing I would also add about this is one of the nice things about 3D art is it does sort of play to both sides. I hear a lot of people talk about how they're very creative and they want to be able to take that creativity, but they also want to do things that are scientific and be involved in that. And 3D art is one of the best ways to do that, because you can do it with math. Like, all that's happening behind this is a lot of math. It's calculating points in space and doing complex subtractions and stuff. But you can also do it the same way Trevor's showing you here, which is the same way you would sculpt an object in real life if you had a ball of clay sitting in front of you. And so the field of 3D art gives you a lot of leeway to pursue your passions while still finding yourself in these sort of heavy science tasks.
So this is kind of, so that's kind of the basics of 3D artwork creation.
I was just going to say that I think this is just really cool, and I just made a smiley face in it.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When did you learn to create 3D art, or to do 3D art?
I learned when I was in high school, I would say. And I learned from a game that was kind of similar to Minecraft. I just kind of started playing around with it, and I found that I really, really liked it. It was fun to start pushing around. It was fun to start playing with. I really liked science, so it gave me it gave me a way to kind of like experiment and try things.
Can you print 3D art? I might take this one because
yeah,
so you can print 3D art. So if you have a 3D printer, or you want to use one of the ones we have at the university, and you create something in 3D, if you save it out into certain file formats, we can print the 3D object and actually be made of plastic by the time it's done. And that's one of the cool things about getting into 3D art is if you get really good at it, you can create objects that you might want.
Because really what the point of this sculpture garden is it's this big landscape that we want to fill with 3D artwork that people make.
Thank you so much, Trevor and all Yates' students. You all have wonderful questions, and I love watching all the questions go by on the chat. Y'all did a great job this morning. I hope the rest of your day is fantastic.